everyone. My name is Khushbu Sharma, and to all who have joined us today, a warm welcome to everybody. And we are back with yet another exciting series of conversations that we have already had with our inspiring minds from VOH Incubator Mentors and Advisors panel. Voice of Healthcare Incubator is the first of a kind healthcare focused incubator with a vision of nurturing minds who have innovative ideas and ready to venture into the healthcare industry. Today I have the pleasure of having with me Mr. Saurav Chawla. Thank you, Saurav, for your time today.
Sure. Thanks for inviting me.
Sure. So our guest today, Saurav, for all our audience who are watching us, Saurav holds a vast experience in a diverse group of sectors that we were just talking about. He's an MBA from Kellogg and then to an investment banker back in the US, and also putting an entrepreneur's hat and venturing into multiple domains of sectors, HR, tech and F&B sector being a few of them. So welcome once again, Saurav.
Thank you, Khushbu.
Just to set up the context and to begin the conversation, Saurav, while I was just introducing that you already have an experience of so many sectors therein, you have been into investment banking, you have the experience of working back in the US, and now you're here in India with a couple of sectors experience. I think our audience would also be interested to understand, I think to begin with, that what are the initial thoughts that maybe would have been in your mind while you were first venturing into a startup, while you were just having a thought of getting into a startup for your own, and I'm sure that these thoughts might have been evolved or changed through the years that you've had your experience in. So why don't we just start with the beginning of your initial thoughts, what were the challenges or pitfalls that you faced, and how have these evolved today? So over to you.
Sure. So I had a good 10-year corporate career, right, before I ventured into the startup domain, starting with analytics, consulting, and then went to the US for my MBA, then did investment banking for 4 years. So I had a good corporate career, good many years behind me. But I always knew while I was going through the corporate career that I would want to do a thing of my own. I was in the US at that time, and I also felt it will be probably better for me. It was a hard decision at that time, but I felt that it will be better for me to do my venture in India. So those things were clear. I was just waiting to gain experience for those 10 years. I wanted to make sure my skill set is developed, make sure that I have some kind of financial independence as well while I work in a job, and then move back to India. So when I moved back to India to start my venture, I purposely did not narrow down to any particular field at that time. Because I'd been away from India for 6 years, I moved back to India and kept my options open. I basically did not do anything for the next 3-4 months at least. I traveled a lot. And after 3-4 months, I kind of felt now it's the right time. I'm refreshed. Let me explore a few areas. So I would have probably spent another 4-5 months to explore a few areas. And during that period, I figured out that I'll start something in the F&B space. And my ultimate vision was to do something in technology. But I did not want to jump into it without getting that experience in India. So I think it worked gradually for me. It worked well. I started a traditional business in the F&B space, retail space, through which I got the idea of what I eventually did in the technology space, which I've always wanted to do. So it took me good 2 years of setting up the F&B business. That business became successful. And through that business, I got the idea of what I wanted to do next. So I kept my options open. I let myself go with the flow a little bit, experience the market conditions again, and then set up my technology venture after that as well.
Got it. Keeping the aspects open and going with the flow, I think, is the one thing that our audience might learn with the amazing experience that you shared. You also mentioned a bit about financial independence, and my next question is somewhere around that. I'm sure while you have a stable and a job, and of course back in the States, you and then thinking of transitioning into an entrepreneur, while you have so many risks in take, while you have so many thoughts in mind. both good and bad, or maybe moderate. So let's say I am a founder and I want to start. I have a thought in my mind and I just want to enter the startup space. But I, of course, have a lot of questions in my head now. Okay, will I be having a job security as much as I have here? Will I be having a financial independence, which I'm expecting to have? So, how difficult do you think is making the choice of leaving a job insecurity that you already have in place and venturing into entrepreneurship, which is stable but might be risky at start? So, how can the young founders overcome this?
It is very hard to leave a well-paying job, especially when you're at a senior position. I was a vice president, getting paid a lot of money. People thought I was not thinking correctly. Some of my best friends thought I had gone crazy. Why am I? Firstly, at that time, now I think it has probably become more sexy to move back to India. I'm talking about like 6 years ago. It was less sexy to move back to India. The startup scene was not as evolved as it is right now. I had reached a good position in my corporate career. So some of my best friends were telling me not to come back to India. They actually told me, you should not. And I felt a little weird. Why are my best friends? They should want me to come back. Apart from my family, which wanted to have me back, a lot of my friends and kind of mentors, my ex-boss told me, he had come to the US just when I was about to move back to India. He was like, he told me that his dream job was to become an investment banker. And you had become an investment banker. You had achieved couple of promotions, you had reached that level, why are you moving back? So everyone had that question. I did not really rationalize it based on how much money I'm leaving on the table. For me, it was, how do I see myself 10 years down the line or 20 years down the line? Will I regret not doing a startup of my own? That is how I made the decision. 20 years down the line, if I became head of some company or head of a bank or whatever, will I still regret not doing something? I'll still be an employee of that company. Would I regret not doing something of my own? That is how I rationalize myself. Not in terms of monetary. How much? If I thought about how much I'm leaving on the table, I would have never been able to come back. Having said that, for me, it was also a little bit easier because I had saved enough for me to be okay if I did not figure out something or failed in my ventures for the next probably 5 years or 6 years. I'd saved enough. And living a comfortable life. That helped me as well. The third thing that helped me was I did not have children at that time. We didn't have children at that time. So I felt that it's easier for me because I don't have that responsibility to make that decision. But it is not an easy decision, to each their own. I think, but I think if you really want to venture into something, my personal belief is, if you really want to start something of your own, you have to let go of what you're doing right now. That is how I function, at least, and how I see other people who have become very successful. Because if you keep your feet in both boats, then you're gonna drown, right? So I did not want to. Some people told me, go to India, find a job, and then explore something. That for me was a no. I knew that I had to really immerse myself into something and then explore. But again, very hard decision. Very risky. Don't try to rationalize it. Think, will you regret if you don't do this? Will you regret that? Looking at if you're a 60-year-old, will you regret not having done this? That is how you could probably evaluate.
Right. And while we are talking about the challenges, or I think the initial thoughts that one must have before even thinking of stepping up into the startup journey, I'm sure that, like any other startup or any other idea, any other business, we do have an initial sort of pitfalls or challenges that we face. Talking about the incubator that we're representing today, and I'm sure that while somebody who has a startup idea in mind, they might look up to their mentors or advisors or the people whom they look upon to or trust. So that's the idea that we have while we are creating VOH Incubator, that we bring together experts like you and from the other domains of the industry, just for our cohorts and startups to have that hands-on experience and learnings, which all of your experiences might help them. So how do you think incubators like us, where we are specifically venturing into one specific segment of the industry, that's healthcare, and need not mention the evolution that the healthcare industry has as of now, specifically in the past few years. So how do you think incubators like these would help nurture the startups and their ideas much more? Over to you.
I think extremely important to have this kind of infrastructure in place. I found it hard when I was starting something of my own. I did not really have an incubator or even proper mentors. I had lived outside India for a while, so I kind of, did not reach out to many mentors. Probably my mentors were outside India. I did not become a part of an incubator. I feel that would have helped me a lot if I had this access. Especially about VOH, I have felt that in the healthcare sector, you're bringing like the who's who of the healthcare industry in India. A lot of renowned doctors, healthcare startup people, and they have this network. They have this understanding of the industry, and focusing on one sector specifically. I feel rather than being a all-rounder kind of an incubator is may not, for me personally, may not be the way to go. I think having that access to that industry, the expertise, the mentorship of specific to that industry at an initial stage when you're trying to find the product market fit is extremely important. I think what you guys are doing is really good, and it's a need of the hour. I think it is required in other sectors as well. Could be fintech, could be HR tech, could be edtech as well.
Absolutely. I think that's the vision that we had while we were just incepting the idea of beginning a healthcare focused incubator. Right, so we've talked about challenges, we've talked about initial thoughts. Now, since leveraging the fact that you have an experience of a couple of sectors and you have been there and set up successful businesses in the respective sectors, so I'm sure there are a set of, I'd not say predefined do's and don'ts, but there's not a manual per se, but I'm sure that leveraging the experience that you have, what according to you are the do's and don'ts of, let's say, a startup who has just stepped in, who have just had an idea, setting up a founding team, let's say, beginning to just find out who can be the person who can head my tech or who can be the person who can head my HR or anything like that. So I think maybe if you could share some do's and don'ts from that perspective, and also how do these evolve, or let's say a do's and don'ts list of a startup who is now well settled and well incubated, I'd not say incubated, but yes, well settled and placed in the specific sector and now is looking out to further options.
Sure.
So please, overall.
I think at the initial stage, what I've realized is it is very important to spend a little bit more time to refine your idea. I think a lot of times I've seen startups who have just gone out, their ideas were not very refined, and they've been able to get funding. And then because the ideas were not refined, they've probably invested a lot of money in a way the product market fit is not there, and they're spending a lot of money, and that's why they've crashed and burned. My suggestion is, great to get funding, awesome, take the funding you can get, but also make sure that you're spending enough time to experiment and finding that right product market fit and going in that direction. Everything else will fall in place. Because if you're able to spend the right money in the right direction, then everything will fall in place. So, but I think that rigor of spending, experimenting, pivoting, and then finding the product market fit at the initial stage sometimes it gets missed because you're kind of not focused enough on that aspect. You're focusing on funding, you're focusing on creating decks, creating a team. This probably is the most important aspect, I feel. And at the later stage, I think once you have the product market fit, once you are you have raised certain funding, I think it's very important to have the execution right. Right? You have to have the right team. You have to focus on the team, the right team to execute through then. Because once you've got the product market fit, then it switches to execution. How do I execute and grow? So, and for that, very important to get people who are not only passionate about the idea, but have the skin in the game. Give them ESOPs, give them be transparent about what you are talking to investors, how is the market, get them to be really passionate about the idea and the company, and find the right people. They have to be talented. So they have to be courageous, they have to be talented, and they have to know about what is going on in the company. And team, I think, focusing on team and execution becomes the key at a later stage.
Understood. And we well mentioned about how do our do's and don'ts transition. I think that's something that you well mentioned. Diverting a little bit from what we've been discussing about startups and challenges, just to and you mentioned in the start that you have been one who always wanted to do something in technology.
Yeah.
I'm sure that there might be some things that keep you fascinating. It can be some gadget, it can be some, let's say, new tech-based video that's come up. So what is that one thing that you're eyeing upon these days? Some gadget that you want to talk about?
It has to be the Vision Pro, the Apple Vision Pro. Unbelievable. I mean, they're great at presentation, but the product itself looks amazing. It is expensive, not for the masses, but I think they'll launch features, make it more accessible, but I think it'll change the entire game. I think a lot of technology can be built on it to go beyond, I think, what the first generation product we're looking at. So really excited about that, and I would want to use that product. I saw it in the market. Yeah, I think next year. Yeah.
All right, great. Then I think we are towards the conclusion of this discussion. Before I let you go, I think I would like to ask you one piece of advice that you would want to give to all our budding entrepreneurs who might be watching this interaction. So, is there any one piece? I know it's difficult to just give out one, but yeah, I mean, anything that you'd want to give out, somebody who's just starting their venture.
I always push people to start something. So if you're in the kind of a conundrum of what to do, whether to take the plunge or not, take the plunge. It's okay to fail. It is fine. You will have opportunities. You can go back to the corporate sector. You can try something again, but don't try to constrain yourself, because 20 years down the line you'll regret it. So take the plunge. I'm sure you know if you do the right things, learn from your failures, you'll succeed.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Saurav, for your time today. It was
Sure.
lovely interacting with you.
Same here.
And I'm sure that our audiences might have learned a vast amount of experiences that you've just shared. So thank you so much, Saurav.
Thank you so much again. Thanks.